Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Bradley, and I will be your moderator. Thank you for joining us today for the third webinar in our series with Stan Garfield, Profiles in Knowledge, Part 3, Collaboration, Communities, Conversation, Knowledge Transfer, and Retention, and Networks. Before we start, I would like to provide some information about our company and introduce today's presenter. Lucidea is a software developing company specialized in museum and archival collections management solutions, as well as knowledge management and library automation systems. Our brands include Sydney, Presto, Argus, Archivera, Eloquent, and Quadrastar. Now I would like to introduce today's presenter, Stan Garfield. Stan is a respected knowledge management practitioner, author, speaker, and community leader. He has provided us with many great webinars that are listed on our website, so please feel free to check those out after today's session. Take it away, Stan.
Thank you, Brad. Welcome to everyone who's joining the webinar today. I'd like to start out by talking about the series that we're doing, Profiles in Knowledge. It's profiles of 60 women and 60 men who are thought leaders in the field of knowledge management. We've been featuring them in the weekly Think Clearly blog that Lucidea publishes every week. For the purposes of these webinars, we've divided them up into 20 categories and a series of 4 webinars of 5 categories each. And later this year, the book Profiles in Knowledge will be published by Lucidea Press, featuring all 120 of the men and women featured in the series. I also want to suggest that as we go through this, there's a lot of content that I'll be covering, and there will be time for you to go back later when the webinar recording is made available and look through it again at your leisure and stopping on any screen, in particular the ones that I put up that have the insights from each of the thought leaders. Often have a lot of detail that we don't have time to cover in depth, but you can go back at your leisure to take a look at them, to provide a screenshot or whatever else you want to further investigate the details of each one of those insights. So with that being said, today's categories, as Brad already mentioned, will include collaboration, communities, conversation, knowledge transfer and retention, and networks. Let's start with the first one, collaboration. And the themes that we'll explore from the thought leaders covered in this section include collaborative innovation and trust, networked model of collaboration, smart collaboration, barriers to collaboration, the collaborative advantage, knowledge flow using an enterprise social network, the concept of working out loud, how to lead virtual teams, knowledge co-creation, and better collaboration through fewer meetings and digital teams. The thought leaders in this section on collaboration include Kirsa Maria Blomqvist, Bob Buckman, Heidi Gardner, Morten Hansen, Elizabeth Lank, Frank Leisner, Dennis Pierce, Nancy Settle-Murphy, Arthur Shelley, and Catherine Shinners. Let's start with Kirsa Maria Blomqvist. She's a professor of knowledge management at Lappeenranta University of Technology in Finland. Her professional interests include trust, knowledge management, collaborative innovation, digitalization, new forms of organizing, and digital platforms. She's the associate editor of the Journal of Trust Research. She's also on the editorial boards for Industrial Marketing Management and the Journal of Organization Design. And she is a founding member and board member of First International Network of Trust Researchers. The books that Kirsa Maria has written: Fast Expert Teams, A New Way to Collaborate, Knowledge Management, Arts and Humanities, Interdisciplinary Approaches and the Benefits of Collaboration, Managing Innovation, Understanding and Motivating Crowds, which she's contributed Chapter 2, Understanding Trust in Organizations, once again chapters contributed to these 3 books you see on the right. The insight that we're providing for Kirsa Maria is Fast Expert Teams, A New Way to Collaborate. So this is something that she's written about and researched. It's an organizing as a process, and at the top you see building trust, and underneath you see leading collaboration, and then the process goes through preparing the work, collaborating, defining the task, background materials, conceptualization of the new solution, and preparing the implementation. Our next thought leader is Bob Buckman. Bob was one of the very few corporate CEOs to directly champion knowledge management, write about it, and actively participate in KM professional organizations. He had a keen interest in knowledge management and knowledge sharing, and he's the former Chief Executive Officer Buckman Laboratories, which was a leader in the specialty chemicals market. He also was the president and chairman of the board of the Applied Knowledge Group, which was a professional services firm. His book, Building a Knowledge-Driven Organization, Overcoming the Resistance to the Free Flow of Ideas, Turning Knowledge into New Products and Services, Moving to a Knowledge-Based Strategy. And when Bob talks about collaboration, he gives the example of how within organizations, information tends to flow through silos, throws through people, and therefore it doesn't necessarily reach everyone that it should, or that it gets altered and diminished as it flows one-to-one. So you see the two images on the left showing individual flows or silos as knowledge flows from one to the other, and the intent that Bob had for collaboration was moved to what you see on the right, where the people are interconnected. Knowledge can flow directly between each of them rather than sequentially through one and then the other. Same thing at the bottom, the silos essentially get broken down as collaboration occurs between people in each silo. Heidi Gardner is a distinguished fellow at the Harvard Law School Center on the Legal Profession. She's the program chair of the Sector Leadership Masterclass and the Smarter Collaboration Masterclass. She was a professor at Harvard Business School. She's the co-founder of Gardner & Company, a research and advisory organization, founding member of CHIEF, connecting and supporting women C-suite leaders. And Heidi studies collaboration between highly autonomous, powerful knowledge workers, such as partners at professional services firms, physicians, and research scientists. She's written 2 books on collaboration. The first one, Smart Collaboration, How Professionals and Their Firms Succeed in Breaking Down Silos. And the second, the follow-up, Smarter Collaboration, a New Approach to Breaking Down Barriers and Transforming Work. She makes the business case for collaboration, which is getting through the pain barrier. So along the bottom, you see the experience with collaboration, and then you see benefits and costs. And there's a leap of faith that you have to make to get to collaboration. But as you do, the costs drop as people gain experience collaborating, and the benefits increase as collaboration becomes normal as the way of working. Morten Hansen is a management professor at the University of California, Berkeley. He's a former professor at the Harvard Business School and at INSEAD in France, and a former manager at the Boston Consulting Group. His research focuses on social networks, collaboration, knowledge management, and corporate innovation. His 3 books are Collaboration, Great at Work, and Great by Choice. And he's considered to be one of the preeminent thought leaders in collaboration, especially based on his first book on the subject. Morten has contributed a list, which is like scorecard for barriers to collaboration that allows you to assess your organization to see where it stands in terms of its readiness to collaborate. The first barrier is unwillingness to seek input and learn from others. Then there's 3 specific examples that you can rate your organization on 1 to 100. The second barrier is the inability to seek and find expertise. Third barrier is unwillingness to help. And the fourth barrier is inability to work together to transfer knowledge. So if you take this assessment and you see where your organization stands, you'll see how much effort you may have to go through in order to achieve a more collaborative organization. Elizabeth Lank worked as an independent specialist with organizations to help them improve efficiency and effectiveness through greater cross-boundary collaboration and knowledge sharing. She worked for an IT services company, ICL, which is now Fujitsu Services, different organization and leadership development roles, including leading ICL's Mobilizing Knowledge program. She's a former member of the editorial boards of the Journal of Change Management, the Journal of Knowledge Management, and Knowledge Management Review. 3 books by Elizabeth: Collaborative Advantage, How Organizations Win by Working Together; Communities of Influence, Improving Healthcare Through Conversations and Connections; and The Power of Learning, A Guide to Gaining Competitive Advantage. Elizabeth has provided 8 principal reasons to collaborate. Number 1, more effective research, greater influence, increased probability of winning business, faster, better, or cheaper development of products, services, or markets, and faster, better, or cheaper delivery of products or services, in-depth learning, meeting an external requirement, or saving costs. Late Frank Leisner, passed away 11 years ago, was the former Chief Knowledge Officer for SAS Global Professional Services, and he founded the SAS Knowledge Management Program. He worked with the IBM Institute for Knowledge Management. He worked with the Babson College Working Knowledge Research Center, and he was invited to the Harvard Graduate School of Education Learning Innovation Laboratory Roundtable. Frank wrote 2 books, Mastering Organizational Knowledge Flow, How to Make Knowledge Sharing Work, and Connecting Organizational Silos, Taking Knowledge Flow Management to the Next Level, Social Media. One of the things that Frank was proud of was what he had developed at SAS, their enterprise collaboration platform called The Hub. This was based on the SocialCast platform that existed at the time, but it was a very effective means for people within SAS to collaborate, to share with one another, to communicate, to inform, and it served as a fine example of how to use an enterprise social network for competitive advantage. Dennis Pierce is a knowledge management and collaboration strategist. He has extensive experience in engineering, manufacturing, information technology, strategic planning, process improvement, and change management. He's currently the online communities and collaboration strategist for Start Early, and he's the former enterprise knowledge architect for Lexmark International, which was the printing company spun off from IBM, focusing on internal and external collaboration strategies and systems. Dennis hasn't written any books, but he has written 3 important blog series on the subjects of enterprise social network adoption, on lessons learned, and on working out loud. So I would recommend finding those blogs by Dennis. You can find them on his LinkedIn profile where his posts are shared, and each of those series I found to be extremely valuable. One example coming from his Working Out Loud series is where does working out loud fit? So it can be a part of enterprise questions and answers, help create a shared vision for an organization. It can help with organizational learning and innovation. And then you do document sharing and you perform social activities as part of working differently. And the result you end up with is reduced amount of email and improved productivity. So the individual teaches how to use the tool, the group teaches how to work differently, the organization then ends up benefiting. Nancy Settle-Murphy is president of Guided Insights, a firm she created to provide consulting, training, and facilitation services. She's a facilitator, a virtual team alchemist, navigator of differences, presenter, author, and the expert on remote work. Her specialties include meeting facilitation, virtual collaboration, virtual team leadership, facilitation, project team communications, strategic communications during times of change, cross-cultural communications, and leadership coaching. She's written a book called Leading Effective Virtual Teams, Overcoming Time and Distance to Achieve Exceptional Results. Her ABCs of virtual leadership are A, accelerating trust, B, building a level playing field, and C, creating social capital. And these are the essential building blocks of a successful virtual team. Arthur Shelley is the founder and CEO of Intelligent Answers. He's the former global knowledge director for Cadbury Schweppes. His specialties are leadership, knowledge co-creation, behavioral development, team dynamics, stakeholder engagement, facilitation, and inclusive event production. He promotes building relationships based on co-creation and collaboration, and Arthur is based in Melbourne, Australia. The 3 books Arthur has written: Becoming Adaptable, Creative Facilitation to Develop Yourself and Transform Cultures, Knowledge Succession, Sustained Performance and Capability Growth through Strategic Knowledge Projects, and The Organizational Zoo, a survival guide to workplace behavior, in which he defined a number of archetypes that define the kinds of characters you would find in the workplace. Arthur, being a big proponent of co-creation, this slide on building creative capability shows that as you increase the diversity of options, you end up increasing the depth of understanding. So instead of working solely in a small group or on your own, if you have co-creation of value, the benefits increase. Catherine Shinders is the principal and founder of the Merced Group. She helps teams build effectiveness and leaders master new competencies in the digital workplace, specializing in change management, internal communications, strategy, program management, and knowledge management. She uses collaboration and digital technologies to accelerate and amplify change outcomes, and she helps organizations adapt to remote, in-office, or hybrid working models. She contributed to 2 books, Changing the World of Work One Human at a Time, which was published by Change Agents Worldwide, and Smarter Innovation Using Interactive Processes to Drive Better Business Results. This model by Catherine is about digital teams talking about a continuous flow. So there's 2 of these bubbles that are labeled me and 2 that are labeled we. So the me is that you have content awareness and accessibility. So you have triggers in your streams, alerts and filters and so forth, which improves awareness. This flows to a network-based group cohesion, which is the we, sharing updates, expanding connections and so forth. Then moving to we, more agility and knowledge flows. So you start with the me, and then through creation and co-creation, you go around the circle to where you end up with the greater flow across the organization. Our second category is communities. And the themes we'll cover here include the community impact, collaboration technology, complexity and boundaries, social journeys, community of community professionals, community circle of life, principles of communities, value creation in communities, social theory of learning, and community tools. Our thought leaders are Vanessa DeMauro, Rachel Hoppe, Alice McGilvray, Celine Schillinger, Keely Sorakti, Luis Suarez, Kay Vivian, the husband and wife team of Beverly and Etienne Wenger Trainer, and Nancy White. Vanessa DeMauro is head of community at Georgian. She's the executive director and founder of Leader Networks. She's a strategist, advisor, researcher, author, and speaker, and a pioneer in the field of online communities and in using digital business solutions to gain customer insight and increase revenue. She specializes in strategy, communities, knowledge management, and marketing. Books, The Social Mind, and The New Symbiosis of Professional Networks, Social Media's Impact on Business and Decision Making. Vanessa has provided a community impact framework running across the top from tactical metrics to the right, strategic metrics. Underneath you see a variety of these metrics, including community vibrancy, engagement, content consumption impact, customer support impact, customer retention and satisfaction, marketing and sales, business integration. And under each of these, you get examples of those kinds of metrics and then the usefulness of each one. Once again, I encourage you to come back, do the recording so you can study this in more depth. Rachel Hoppe founded an organization called Engaged Organizations, which she currently co-leads, and then she was also co-founder of the Community Roundtable that supported organizations in using community governance models to pursue agility and innovation. Rachel focuses on fostering workplace engagement and transforming how people work by building community-centric cultures. She specializes in strategy, leadership, the future of work, the digital workplace, and community management. Her book, Becoming Hybrid, a Team Collaboration Handbook, which includes exercises to help teams assess, define, and commit to shared collaborative practices. The collaboration technology framework from Rachel is part of her engaged organizations, her current organization, and it includes an engagement layer, which includes listen, validate, contribute, and commit. Underneath that, a management layer, content management, member management, event management, and at the bottom, the administrative layer, which includes analytics and reporting, platform architecture, and vendor factors. The details are there for you to study later on. Alice McGilvray is the principal at her own firm called 4KM, who focuses on strengthening leadership throughout organizations or communities and improving the generation and flow of knowledge across boundaries. Specialties include knowledge management leadership development, especially for complex work, qualitative research to help organizations better understand key issues, communities of practice, organizational culture, organizational development, application of complexity thinking and natural systems principles to organizations. She's written a number of books, contributed chapters to them, so they're communities of practice, complexity and knowledge management, knowledge-intensive organizations, sustainability leadership, establishing a successful knowledge-driven culture, and successful knowledge leadership principles and practices. Alice's framework for research of complexity boundaries includes on the left contextual boundary examples between domains or disciplines, between ecosystems. So that's the between part. And then on the right, you have operational boundary examples between an organization and its environment, between groups of people, between learning environments. So they're both emphasizing boundary spanning, but in one, it's the contextual boundary, and then in the other, it's the operational boundary. And then you bridge these with intersections that allow information and knowledge to flow across the boundaries. Celine Schillinger is the founder and CEO of We Need Social. She's a change activist and a social collaboration leader, specializing in engagement leadership, mobilization, and community building in international environments. Her book is called Dare to Unlead the Art of Relational Leadership in a Fragmented World. Quote from Celine, being social is not the end goal at all. Social is an enabler to solve business problems more effectively and faster. So it's something to keep in mind when we pursue social technologies. The point is not using social technologies. The point is to use them to solve business problems and work better together. Keely Sarakti is the Director of Knowledge and Collaboration at SIFT. She's also an adjunct instructor at Northwestern University in their Master in Learning and Organizational Change program. She specializes in transforming the design of distributed work, digital workplace, communities, customer and employee engagement, learning, communications, knowledge sharing, and collaboration practices and systems. She's also the co-leader of the Chicago Online Community Professionals Community of Practice. It's shown here. The Chicago Online Community is actually available to anyone. It's not limited to people who reside in Chicago. So this is a set of screenshots taken from that community. So they have about 300 members. Their goal is to bring professionals from around the world together who work on communities and to further their knowledge together. So, if we're talking about communities here at Thought Leaders, one of the things that I believe is always important is that we practice what we preach. So Keely is an example of that, not only being an expert in communities, but helping to lead a community for community professionals. As a case study, creating a collaborative learning community, stewardship, 3 themes. And the 3 themes are make emotional connections, encourage discovery, and gather with purpose. Luis Suarez is the co-founder of asynco.org. He spent 18 years at IBM. He's a community builder and social business strategist, specializing in knowledge management, collaboration, learning, online communities of practice, remote and distributed work, and social networking for business. Here's some examples of the prolific writing that Luis has done. He has not written a book, but he has offered his thoughts on a number of social platforms. Starting on the left, El Sua, which is his private blog, personal blog. Then moving to the right, LinkedIn, where he's offered a number of posts on articles. Then in the middle, he's moved over to Mastodon recently, not using Twitter any longer. And he also uses Flickr for sharing photos and images. So a blogger, a poster, but certainly someone who has championed the use of social tools as opposed to using email. Luis Suarez is known as the father of sort of the no email movement, but he's also somebody who's done work with communities. And the Community Circle of Life is something that he and I co-presented at a conference a number of years ago. So as a community's knowledge base grows, more members will join to seek out that knowledge. Then when you have these additional members, you have a richer knowledge base. And as a result, when people connect, they find that they get more information and they connect to more people and form their own networks. And this makes it easier for the members to connect, collaborate, and share. And the more members you get, the richer the knowledge base becomes. Kay Vivian is a former senior manager, knowledge management and learning at Accenture. She was also director of strategic intelligence at the Hartford, former director at GE, former senior proposal and presentation strategist at Deloitte, former national director of proposals and presentations at PwC, and her former personal website featured content on knowledge management, communities, and gaming. She was a prolific blogger, but that site is no longer up, but I have managed to pull it out of the Internet Archive, and it's available in my profile of Kay. The book that she wrote is called Winning Proposals, a Step-by-Step Guide to the Proposal Process. She shared a number of principles of communities. Communities are voluntary. A community can be a small active core with a narrow focus or a larger group with diverse voices. Communities have value when they are focused around data, not org structures. Workers participate in two dimensions, vertical business hierarchies and horizontal roles that cut across the business. Communities require moderation. Unless managers give workers time and encouragement to participate, communities will fail. Key thought leaders must be involved in the community for it to succeed. Communities play an important role in content creation and management. Communities are the asset generators of a knowledge management system, and members of communities develop trust and a strong camaraderie that results in candid questions, answers, and effective problem solving. These are principles that are probably very similar to the ones I've written about. I've written about 10 principles of successful communities, so there's a fair amount of overlap between what Kay has written and what I have written. Emily Wenger Trainer is a social learning consultant. She develops strategies and practices for cultivating communities, networks, and other forms of social learning, with expertise in the design of learning architectures and the facilitation of processes, activities, and use of new technologies. Her specialties include dealing with complex issues, designing and facilitating events that integrate online and offline, integrating social media in the learning strategies of communities, working and designing for distributed teams, and designing for conversations and dialogue. Here's a number of the books that Bev has co-written, in each case co-written with her husband, Etienne Wenger Trainer. So there's communities of praxis within and across organizations, systems convening, a crucial form of leadership, learning to make a difference, value creation in social learning spaces, designing for change, using social learning to understand organizational transformation, and learning in landscapes of practice, boundaries, identity, and knowledgeability in practice-based learning. Bev has created a value creation matrix for communities running through 5 cycles, starting with the ones on the left, the immediate value, productive activities, which include meetings and projects and inquiries, then moving through potential value, which is creating things like documents and relationships and insights and case studies, and then applying value, which is done in the actual practice of work, and then realizing the value through measurements and feedback, and reframing value in a new framework, which is critical reflection. And then it sort of cycles back. Her husband, Etienne Wenger Trainer, is the co-founder of the Social Learning Lab, an independent thinker, researcher, consultant, author, and speaker, and he's considered probably known as the father of communities of practice. As someone who work on it, and social learning theory has certainly been an inspiration to many, including me, who have gone on to specialize in communities. In addition to all the books that I showed on Bev's slide, Etienne also was the author or co-author of a number of important early books on communities, including Situated Learning, Communities of Practice, Cultivating Communities of Practice, and Digital Habitat Stewarding Technology for Communities, all of which are important books and could be highly valuable to those wanting to learn more about communities of practice. ATN's Social Theory of Learning, some key concepts from it, starting with community, which is where do we belong, identity, who are we becoming, meaning, what is our experience, and practice, what are we doing, all part of social learning. Nancy White is the founder of Full Circle Associates. She's a core group member of the KM4 Dev community, which is a long-standing community focused on international development. She supports distributed learning teams and communities of practice. Her specialties include online facilitation, training, knowledge sharing, strategic communications, framing, issue communications, and project management. 4 books that Nancy has contributed to: Digital Habitats, the one I previously showed. She was a co-author with Etienne Winger and John Smith. The Change Handbook, Knowledge Networks, Innovation Through Communities of Practice, and the Encyclopedia of Virtual Communities and Technology. A couple of graphics here from Nancy about community tools. On the left, we have an ecology of tools that shows how the different types of tools fit together. So you have synchronous tools, you have asynchronous tools, you have tools that facilitate participation in the community, tools for capturing and sharing knowledge, and these all form part of the ecosystem for a community. On the right, you have even further detail about this in 4 corners of the circle. At the top, participation; on the right, synchronous; on the bottom, reification; and on the left, asynchronous. And then the various types of tools are categorized according to these 4 dimensions. Our next category is conversation. And the themes that we'll talk about here are considerations for conversations, the knowledge cafe process, and conversational leadership context. Our thought leaders are Nancy Dixon, David Gertine, and John Hobel. Nancy Dixon is the principal and founder of Common Knowledge Associates. She's the president of the U.S. Academy of Professional Dialogue. She's a university professor who turned into a consultant. She focused on increasing collaboration and knowledge sharing in the workplace via cultural transformation using dialogue as the agent of change. And her interests include hybrid teams, the best of virtual and face-to-face, knowledge management, and conversation. The books that Nancy has written include Common Knowledge, The Organizational Learning Cycle, How We Can Learn Collectively, Perspectives on Dialogue, Dialogue at Work, and Unleashing the Power of the Profession. This one's called Company Command. It's about use of communities within the U.S. Army. Considerations for conversations. So she's defined a number of categories here: context, self, and design. Under context, she has purpose, values, and awareness. Under self, the individual responsibilities that one must take for having good conversations. And on the right, the convener responsibilities, that who convenes these conversations, what must they do, and the leader responsibilities, establishing the meeting and encouraging psychological safety. So there's a lot of details here about how to create successful conversations and the roles of both the individuals and the leaders. David Gertine is the director of Gertine Knowledge. He's a writer, speaker, and conversational facilitator. He works in knowledge management, organizational learning, and conversational leadership. He's the founder of the Gertine Knowledge Community and the creator of the Gertine Knowledge Cafe, which is a tool for bringing people together to have meaningful conversations. On the left, you see his online book, which is called Conversational Leadership, which is a cross between a book and a blog, which continuously updates. And on the right, you see his book, Leading Issues in Social Knowledge Management, which he is the editor of. Since David is a big proponent of the Knowledge Cafe process, it's a good idea then to explain what that includes. It starts with the speaker making a short presentation. Then they pose a trigger question to everyone who attends. They break into small group conversations at tables. There are 3 rounds of conversation where people rotate from different tables, and then the whole group gets back together for a conversation in a circle, and they share actionable insights. And the process can be adapted depending on the purpose, context, numbers, venue, and so forth. But David's been doing this for a long time, doing them online, doing them in person, and he's had a lot of success with them. John Hobel has been actually collaborating with David on the subject of conversational leadership. John is the managing director and co-founder of Stratactical, which is a consulting and training provider. He's a practitioner, speaker, and author on the convergence of knowledge management and organization development. He has expertise in knowledge management, knowledge transfer, knowledge retention, talent markets, communities, project management, change management, organization development, diversity and inclusion, collaboration, social media, social business, agility, conversation leadership, and working out loud. Books that he's written, the one on the left, which is called Creating Conversational Leadership, part of the same series in which my Communities of Practice book appeared. And then he's contributed to the other 3 books on here, Making It Real, Sustaining Knowledge Management, Measuring the ROI of Knowledge Management, and Smarter Innovation, Using Interactive Processes to Drive Better Business Results. Provided the context for conversational leadership, starting with its purpose, which is to build relationships, to have wise innovation and generating ideas, to be able to make sense and able to make better decisions. And then the conversation design, what's the purpose of the conversation, what's the content, and what's the approach. And you see it bridging between self and community. At the bottom, the enablers are mindset and self-awareness, behaviors, individual and group methods, and conversational skills. Knowledge transfer and retention includes the KM tools and techniques for knowledge capture, transfer, and reuse, a 3-step process for preserving deep smarts, and a methodology for knowledge retention. So knowledge retention is that problem we all face where organizations are losing people that have worked there for a long time, and with it, the knowledge that they were able to apply while they were working there is potentially lost as those people leave the organization. So the intent of knowledge transfer and retention is what to do about that problem. Our thought leaders in this category are Bill Kaplan, Dorothy Leonard, and Moria Levy. Bill Kaplan is the founder of Working Knowledge CSP, which stands for Concept, Strategy, Practice. He's the former Chief Knowledge Officer and Knowledge Management Practice Manager for Acquisition Solutions Incorporated, and he focuses on knowledge capture, sharing, and retention. He's written a book and contributed to a book. His book is called Losing Your Minds, Capturing, Retaining, and Leveraging Organizational Knowledge, and he contributed a chapter to Gaining Buy-in for KM. KM tools and techniques for knowledge capture, transfer, and use. He's divided it up into 2 sides, one purely for capture and one for capture, transfer, and reuse. So under capture, we have SME interviews, we have knowledge mapping, and knowledge transition interviews. Under capture, transfer, and reuse, there's expertise location, mentoring and internship programs, fast learning, knowledge assets, and communities of practice. Dorothy Leonard is the William J. Abernathy Professor of Business Administration Emerita at Harvard Business School. She's chief advisor in the Leonard Barton Group, and she specializes in knowledge transfer, innovation management, team creativity, and assessment of organizational knowledge assets. A number of books that Dorothy has written include Deep Smarts, How to Cultivate and Transfer Enduring Business Wisdom, Critical Knowledge Transfer, Tools for Managing Your Company's Deep Smarts, When Sparks Fly, Harnessing the Power of Group Creativity, Wellsprings of Knowledge, Building and Sustaining the Sources of Innovation, and Managing Knowledge Assets, Creativity, and Innovation. She provided a 3-step process for preserving deep smarts being the knowledge that exists in organizations from the most capable experts. Number one, identify and focus, systematically identify knowledge to preserve it. Number two, transfer, match the transfer strategy to the needs and resources of your organization. And number three, embed, integrate knowledge sharing into organizational processes. So as many of us know, it's not possible to do knowledge transfer at the last minute when someone's about to leave. You have to be doing this all along for it to be effective. Moria Levy is the founder and leader of ROM Knowledgeware. She consults on knowledge sharing, retention, and development projects. She's also a researcher, author, speaker, and community leader. She has expertise in knowledge retention and the KI Sure methodology. And she helps lead the KM Global Network and helped develop the International Standards Organization KM standard, which is ISO 30401. Her books, 21st Century Management, A Holistic Approach to Lessons Learned, Implementing New Business Models for Profit and Nonprofit Organizations, Global Practices in Knowledge Management for Societal and Organizational Development, and New Research on Knowledge Management Applications and Lessons Learned. She developed the knowledge retention methodology, which starts in the preliminary stage with deciding on whose knowledge to preserve. Then it moves through definition of scope, performing knowledge transfer, and then integration of that knowledge within the organization. Our final category today is networks. And the themes that we'll talk about in this section of networks are value creating network, value network analysis, network properties and structure, activate networks of influencers, the lexicon of network analysis, networks of networks, amplify and spread success, key go-to people, similarities and differences, and 4 networks weave the enterprise. Our network's thought leaders are Verna Ali, Patty Anklam, Rob Cross, Graham Durant Law, June Holly, Valdis Krebs, and Jessica Lipnack. Verna Ali retired after a distinguished career in knowledge management and value networks. She's no longer active, but she was the founder and principal of Verna Ali Associates. She was a consultant, author, and speaker. The books that Verna wrote include Value Networks and the True Nature of Collaboration, The Future of Knowledge, Increasing Prosperity Through Value Networks, The Knowledge Evolution, Expanding Organizational Intelligence, and Learning Links, Enhancing Individual and Team Performance. And Verna is considered to be the founder of the idea of value networks. So she's got an image here of a value creating network. Value networks are sets of roles and value exchanges that generate a specific kind of value. Any purposeful activity can be understood as a value network. So here you see how these value networks get constructed using roles, assets, value. There's financial assets that are part of this picture. There's human competence, there's brand and relationships, and there's internal structure. Relationships and flows between these are the value network, and here's an example of one. So in this case, Cisco is in the middle, and then you see around Cisco the customers, the sales channels, competitors, standards groups, strategic partners, OEMs, distributors, and manufacturers and assemblers. And then between these, circling the orbit of Cisco, are the flows in between. And for each of those flows, there can be the definition of value as shown in the previous slide. So there's both tangibles and intangibles. The intangibles are shown by a blue dotted line, the flow between these entities. And by using value analysis, you can move beyond simple social network analysis to actually establishing the value of the connections within the network. Patty Anklam is a retired collaboration and network consultant. She was the former director of knowledge management at Nortel Networks, the former senior consulting engineer at Digital Equipment Corporation, where Patty and I worked together. Her specialties include social software and collaboration, infrastructure assessment, design and tool introduction, social network analysis, communities of practice, contextual design, work practice modeling, and organization development. It's worth noting that as we talk about the specialties of each of our thought leaders, there's a lot of overlap, that many of them not only are in the area of social network analysis, as in Patty's case, but also in communities, which we covered earlier. So they could have been put in multiple categories. We just chose one for purposes of this that best summarized what they specialized in. He wrote the book Network, A Practical Guide to Creating and Sustaining Networks at Work and in the World. She defined network properties and structure here, starting with the hub and spoke, the starting context of networks, a hierarchy that shows relationships, hierarchy, showing the connection between teams, random connections, which is discoverable through doing social network analysis, stovepipes, where people are cut off within individual stovepipes, as we saw earlier in the chart for Bob Buckman, hierarchy, which is command and control structure, and the core periphery, a healthy end state where people are interconnected through a variety of connections. Rob Cross is an author, professor, and researcher who has studied the underlying networks of effective organizations and the collaborative practices of high performers. He's Senior Vice President of Research at the Institute for Corporate Productivity, IC4P. He's the Edward A. Madden Professor of Global Leadership at Babson College, the co-founder and director of Connected Commons, and he specializes in agility, well-being, innovation, collaboration, and network analysis. Books, The Hidden Power of Social Networks, Understanding How Work Really Gets Done in Organizations, Driving Results Through Social Networks, How Top Organizations Leverage Networks for Performance and Growth, the Organizational Network Field Book, Best Practices, Techniques, and Exercises to Drive Organizational Innovation and Performance, and his latest one, Beyond Collaboration Overload, How to Work Smarter, Get Ahead, and Restore Your Well-Being. Activating networks of influencers is something that can be shown through these before and after social network analysis graphs. You start by identifying central connectors, brokers, and energizers, and you put in place strategies for engaging them in each community. So in this case, before they did an organizational network analysis, or ONA, you had groups in the different parts of the world, Canada, UK, Angola, Brazil, Gulf of Mexico, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia. And there were only like a handful of connectors connecting up some of these groups together. Otherwise, they were somewhat isolated from one another. Then, by identifying those connectors, brokers, and energizers, and putting in strategies to engage them so that they would connect with more people in other groups, then 9 months later, they did another organizational network analysis. And you see that the connections are far denser, and there's far more connections between those different parts of the world than there was before. So organizational network analysis allows you to identify the current state. It allows you to see who the connectors, brokers, and energizers are. But then you have to actually take action to make more connections, right? It doesn't solve the problem. It just helps you to see it and then be able to see if you've made a difference with your strategy after the fact. In this case, 9 months later. Graham Durant Law is former principal and director of Knowledge Matters. He specialized in what he called business network analysis, or BNA. But a number of years ago, Graham left the field of knowledge management to focus on bagpiping. So if you go to his site today, you won't find any trace of his knowledge management background. You'll find about his bagpiping. But I was once again able to retrieve all of his substantial work from the Internet Archive and put it in my profile of him. He wrote a book called Network Project Management, Visualizing Collective Knowledge to Better Understand and Model a Project Portfolio. And Graham defined these terms, which are widely used in the field of network analysis. He calls it his lexicon of network analysis, starting with a node. A node is the smallest unit in the network. It is also known as a vertex. A tie is a line between two nodes, indicating there is a relationship between them. A graph is a set of nodes and a set of ties between pairs of nodes. A network consists of a graph and additional information on the nodes or the ties of the graph. It is also known as a map. So we've been seeing these pictures of networks throughout here, and this helps to explain what some of the terminology is. What you're looking for, or what are the ties between the nodes of the network, and what can you do to create more ties and to strengthen connections across an otherwise splintered organization. June Holly is a network weaver, researcher, and writer at the Network Weaving Institute. June helps those working towards transformation to network, share learning, and create the support system for transformation. June has written 2 books, The Network Weaver Handbook, A Guide to Transformational Networks, and An Introduction to Network Weaving. Now, this is the slide talking about the networks of networks and how they amplify and spread success. So if you look on the right, you'll see cross-sector networks or networks with different focus. So these networks are involved with learning and sharing. They provoke each other by pointing out their different perspectives. They're trying to look for synergies where work is complementary and spread ideas from one network to another. But underneath, you have local networks that are often focused on a leverage point. So they're local policy development or local projects. And the idea is by connecting local networks and cutting across sectors, you can create networks of networks. These may be international, national, or state networks of networks in which there's learning, sharing, supporting, targeting large-scale action for policy or advocacy, and supporting the structure for networks across the local networks. So the idea is that a local network can do some good, but when you create networks of networks, there's larger scale action that can be attempted. Aldous Krebs is the founder and chief scientist at OrgNet LLC. He's an organizational consultant, a data scientist, and mentor. He's the developer of Inflow, which is a software-based organizational network analysis methodology that maps and measures knowledge exchange, information flow, communities of practice, networks of alliances, and other networks within and between organizations. Here's a picture of his O&A software called Inflow that he developed and he uses in the process of being an organizational network analysis consultant. And he's one of the leading consultants in this area where he can use his own software and have people use it to look at the organization networks within and across organizations. So he says, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, what is an interactive, measurable map of your organization, community, or industry worth? So you can x-ray your organization to see how it really works. Inflow performs social and organizational network analysis and visualization in the product. It was originally developed in the 1990s as a network analysis tool for business people by business people, and it's since been licensed by thousands of individuals. So that's Valdez's contribution, creating the Inflow software and then being able to effectively use it. A couple of points from Valdez. On the left, you'll see an O&A chart showing who the key go-to people are that are represented by the blue and green circles. So this is one of the benefits you get from doing an organizational network analysis. You can see who your key people are. You can take steps to make sure that those key people are retained, that you take care of them, because if you lost them, you'd lose a lot of the connections that keep organizations together, and that can have a very negative effect. A quote from Valdez that he likes to make is, connect on your similarities and benefit from your differences. So you have differences in blue and differences in green, and you connect on what you have in common, but then you benefit from what's different because you each bring something to the table. So if you apply that to the chart on the left, the more people that you can connect together because they have something in common, some similarities that causes them to want to connect, the more you can then bring the other things that they bring to the table to bear, and everyone can benefit from those differences. Our final thought leader today is Jessica Lipnack. She's an author, speaker, and editor, the co-founder of NetAge. She focuses on virtual teams and has expertise in networks and collaboration. Jessica's written a number of books: Virtual Teams, People Working Across Boundaries with Technology, The Age of the Network, Organizing Principles for the 21st Century, the networking book, People Connecting with People, the TeamNet Factor, bringing the powerful boundary crossing into the heart of your business, and networking, People Connecting with People, linking ideas and resources. She co-wrote these with her husband, Jeffrey Stamps. Our final insight slide is 4 networks weave the enterprise. So starting with private at the bottom, which is more opaque, moving up through public, which is more transparent, we have 4 types of networks. At the bottom, we have social networks, who tend to be my friends, who knows whom. Next, we have knowledge networks, which tend to be my topics, who knows what. Then when you move more into the public, you have working networks, my job, who do I work with? And that includes management teams, project teams, communities of practice, special events. And then at the top, you have the organization network, my position, who do I work for? So that includes the org chart with the hierarchy, bureaucracy, and this together forms the enterprise. So if you understand how these networks exist, and then you can take advantage of them, there are elements within here which include things like communities of practice, which can be a valuable use of networks that can cut across the organization. So you see those things that go across multiple levels are probably the things that are the most valuable to the organization. So that concludes our presentation for today. I want to conclude by suggesting that you obtain copies of the 3 books that I've written so far for Lucidea. There are links here that allow you to go and ask for a free electronic copy of each one. The first one is called Proven Practices for Promoting a Knowledge Management Program, which helps you in selling KM within your organization. Second is called The 5 C's of KM. And the most recent one is called Knowledge Nuggets, 100 KM Infographics. They're all available. The links are there. And as I mentioned before, I've got a 4th book for Lucidea coming out later this year, which will include all 120 of the thought leaders featured in this webinar series. We've got one more webinar to go after today. We'll redo the remaining thought leaders. And after that, you can look forward to the book appearing with all the details that we've covered in this webinar series. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Brad.
Thank you, Stan, for the wonderful presentation. And to our audience, if you have any questions on any of our software or our company, or would like to reach out to Stan, the contact details are listed on the screen. And please stay tuned for more webinars and content related to this series. On behalf of the Lucidea team, I thank you all for attending, and until next time, thank you.